had fun
She's
making
so
it fun.
funny.
I have to tell you that. It was such, well, it was a play, you know, we had this fun process. You know, we met for lunch the first time at Gwendolyn's house, and she had this big whiteboard up, and she said, now look, this is the finance stuff we're going to do, boom, 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 and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, oh, yes, you're going to do that part. And then she described Samantha to me. You had a really good idea of how you wanted this woman to be. So she made it really easy for me to just hook right in and bring her to life. And you know, and then when you do, as a writer, you know, once you start a character in motion, she takes on her own life.
Yeah, they take on their own personality and they decide what they're going to do.
So it was so much fun. It was just a delight. Now I wanted to, sometimes I made a couple scenes a little bit more steamier than was
There's
required.
some steamy scenes after she gets married, right? Right. We hold
But she had to keep saying, Kath, it's a romance, but you know, it's a finance book. So, but it was.
Well,
just,
you know, let's see. She dated a bond trader, or she dated a financial advisor. So she, you know, so we got her.
And then
a
she has
love
a,
life.
and then
she dated a money manager, and then she.
And how about the rich man? You know,
the money manager.
Oh.
She wrote it.
I read it more recently than you wrote it, so I remember.
He was a playboy, okay?
He was a playboy, but she was a playboy,
what he did.
and she pointed out because that you know, just because somebody else is supposedly paying the bill, that you start hanging around with really wealthy people, you end up spending more money. I discovered this when I lived in Miami. You know, and they say just because you're saying, okay, if I'm going to go out to this restaurant, then I have to be wearing the right outfit, and then I have to have my nails done, I have to have my hair done, I have to do all this, and you're going, oh, you know, Joe took me out to dinner, and Joe spent $150, and I spent $300 on the outfit, and they to take me out to dinner. It's like, who precisely is paying for this meal? You know, so I kind of got a kick out of that, you know. Now, you're a published romance author also.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, I have a paranormal romance out. It's called Echoes of Love. And it's actually, I honestly believe it was the story behind my husband and me when we met. He passed me as a stranger on the sidewalk, and I just sort of like dropped my jaw and said, oh my God, I'm going to marry that guy. And you know, we've been together for 30-something years, so it did happen. But it's just it was an interesting phenomenon because, you know, how do you get a thought like that? And so I had this feeling that we must have known each other from another life. And then after we got married, we went shopping in an antique store and bought this gorgeous sideboard. And so it's basically a story about lovers through time who were murdered in their past lives, and they find each other again in the future through this sideboard, because it's a family heirloom of hers.
Through a piece of furniture. So a romance built around a piece of furniture. I love that. Yeah. And to find out about that, they should go to your website?
KathleenPickering.com.
KathleenPickering.com, and they can find out more about Echoes of Love. So anyway, I was just a little bit interested about the writing process again, on the two of you writing together. So you came up, and here's the things you want to cover. We know we want to cover everything, you know, everything starting with bank accounts all the way through getting her mortgage and all these kinds of things and all these different steps. So you'd say, okay, we need a chapter about bank accounts, and then you would take that idea and write the chapter and send it back to her.
Yes.
I've had another collaborative writing team on the show once before, and I'm always. That fascinates me, the collaborative writing process.
One thing I think that's interesting about the two of us, too, is that we're so completely different.
Yes, we are.
I'm a banker. If it's 3 o'clock, it's 3 o'clock. And I'm very mathematical oriented, and I'm very straight. And I write a good business letter. That's the reality of it. Kathleen is very creative.
I like to work in my pajamas.
Not that important. And, you know, and she's got more of a flow that would never work in a bank. And I have more of a rigidity that would probably never work in a publishing house. I like dogs. She likes cats. You know, we're just.
I've met Kathleen's cats, actually. Yes.
They're very
They're
nice.
They're as big as
They're
dogs.
big. They're as big as dogs.
They're bigger than my dog.
And I'm with the same man for 30 years, and she's single and has that wonderful jet-setter life, and so we are very opposite. And you know,
the life of single women.
I know,
so
you girls, I know, it's fabulous. Stop! I don't know how much I can take.
But it is fun, and I think that's one of the things that makes it work. I mean, we've butted heads sometimes, but that's part of what makes it work.
Well, if you didn't, though, I think that if it all went smoothly, it probably wouldn't be as interesting.
Right.
Well, yeah. But it's important because we both have a perspective that we have to explain to each other, and then it just melds again and keeps moving. It's fabulous. And she's taught me a lot.
And ditto on both sides. But one of the things, like when Samantha is opening a bank account, I sort of had an idea in my mind of what she needs to do in order to write the finance around it and make it fun. But when I'm explaining how to trade a stock, I simply said to Kathleen, we need a break. The reader needs to get away from this much nonfiction seriousness and have a nice break. And it was fun because at the time she has children. We probably shouldn't give away the story, but she does have children. And so Kathleen had some very funny little quips and stuff that the kids were doing.
Because I raised 2 children. But so it just worked out beautifully. And you know, she would say to me, "Give me a break now." So I would have to think, what can Samantha do now? What kind of trouble can she get in? You know, and so we usually, and she'd either meet with friends or, well, I don't want to tell you.
There's lots of shopping and going out to fun places and things too.
Some traveling.
Some traveling. Yeah. She goes to some really interesting places with some really interesting people. No, it's a good story. It's a good finance book and it's a good story. And putting the 2 of them together was just a brilliant idea.
My neighbors have already bought like 4 or 5 copies because they're giving them to their graduates.
I was actually reading
it.
And there's a writer who's a mutual friend of ours who was reading an email from her, and she said she'd bought 4 copies, and in fact I've got this Nancy, the writer of this book, Killer Knots. Yeah,
I'm meeting her on Tuesday, so I can sign them.
You can sign her copies of the book. She goes, "Oh yeah, I got a bunch of them. They make excellent gifts."
Yeah,
in this economy, people especially really need to be looking at this stuff.
It's going to be. I just think it was Gwendolyn's brainchild. It was a fabulous idea, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it. And I'm looking forward to book number 2 because there's a lot of things that Samantha has to get into. So,
but there's some things and you'll be learning new things too at the same time.
That's right.
Now now you're a financial planner now.
I'm a financial advisor. I'm
a
also
financial advisor. Okay.
Equity analyst. So I don't actually run money for anyone, but I do advice on sort of an hourly basis without being a neutral party. And I'm also an equity analyst, and I cover consumer products and household goods. So Kimberly-Clark, Procter & Gamble, Tupperware, sort of a Huggies versus Pampers world. Anything that has to do with cleaning products, mascara, anything like that I'm covering right now for a large cap value manager. Okay, well that's really interesting. Now we talk about there's some travel in the book and going to some interesting places, and are these places that you have visited, the 2 of you? I have. Have you been to St. Bart's?
I have not.
We'll have to get Kathleen to St. Bart's.
Can she go there by boat? Because they've got a beautiful boat.
Yes, we do.
That would be a long sailing trip.
That would be we would have to take some time off. I'm willing to do it.
You're willing to
sure.
do that. Yeah.
Let's see, about 20 minutes.
You could ride as you're cruising the Caribbean for a month.
That's right.
There you go.
Well, actually, speaking of cruising the Caribbean, the 3 of us actually are going to be cruising the Caribbean next week because we are going. All 3 of us are going to be on the Florida Romance Writers Cruise with Your Muse.
Fun in the Sun cruise.
Fun in the Sun cruise with your Muse, which goes out of Fort Lauderdale and visits the Bahamas and comes back, and it's a writers' conference at sea.
Yes, it's going to be fabulous.
And Kathleen is now the president of the Florida Romance
Writers.
I am, for better or for worse.
I'm the vice president of the Connecticut Romance Writers.
Well, Romance Writers of America is a wonderful organization, so being affiliated with that's a great opportunity.
Any writer in any fiction genre who comes to me and says, they're starting out, what's your advice? What's your advice to me? And my number 1 piece of advice, the first thing I tell them is to join your local professional organization. And no matter what genre you write, I recommend the Romance Writers of America because they've got a fantastic infrastructure, and they're also really helpful. They're really generous.
Absolutely.
You go into the first meeting that I ever went into was when I was living in Florida. It was the Florida Romance Writers meeting, and I found it on the internet, and I go in and I sit down at a table, and I'm sitting there going, I know nothing. I know absolutely nothing. And the person sitting next to me was I sat next to several, Linda Conrad, who at that time had 15 or 20 books out,